Hello, my name is Rechelle Mojica and I am a faculty member at San Diego Miramar College. In addition to being an instructor, I am also the Access Technology Specialist, as well as a part-time counselor and a face-to-face as well as online instructor, which gives me a lot of opportunity to interact with students. And one of my areas of interest and expertise is in accessibility and usability and universal design, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So accessibility is about removing barriers. So I chose this photo, although I think if you know anything about accessibility standards for buildings, this may not be the most accessible entrance way, but I think it serves as a nice image to show you that they included a ramp in the center of the stairs so that it wasn't an afterthought. It wasn't something that was attached to a side of a building or that somebody had to come in from the back. So I think this is a nice picture talking about the accessible environment, which would benefit everyone and encourages diversity in our society. So an overview of accessibility. First and foremost, keep it simple. Maintain a simple and consistent page layout throughout your course or your site. This will ensure that students can easily navigate through the site and determine what they need to do next. So I included an image of a sample navigation from a Blackboard, from my Blackboard site. A lot of times students have difficulty when instructors get really creative and each class that they sign up for looks completely different, that the icons are different, the navigation is different, and some instructors, page by page, choose different icons, different navigation, and so sometimes students don't know what they're supposed to do next. So choosing something that's simple and easy for students to understand, and also that you limit the number of clicks required to get to important information. Sometimes instructors like to be very creative and choose images, and then the student has to click on an image to get to the next image, to get to the next image, and then they have forgotten why they were even going to that image to begin with. So keeping it simple, maintaining a simple structure, something consistent that would allow the student to easily figure out what they're supposed to do, how they get back to where they were, and find the information that they're looking for. Another thing to consider is using accessible multimedia. So everyone loves to use videos. Videos are a lot more engaging for the most part than text only, but make sure that you include the captions. So there's a little image of me with some captioning. I have an example of a caption video that I created. I have the captions turned on. Most of the time when I make a caption video, I have a closed caption. Students don't want to have to view the captions. They don't have to turn it on. But make sure that you always include the captions, and I also like to include a transcript. I have a lot of students who say I print out the transcripts, I take notes as I'm watching the video, or if there was a word that you used that I didn't understand, I can go and look it up, I can highlight, I can make notes. So I think the transcript is just another additional way to make it more accessible, make it more user-friendly. Include alternate tags for images and animations. So that's another challenge. A lot of times people use a lot of graphics, but if someone is visually impaired and uses a screen reader, if you know a screen reader reads all of the text that lies beneath the images that are on the website. If there are no alternate tags or any information for that image, what the student hears is blank image or blank file. If you're trying to show them something, make sure that the image has an alt tag, some way that the student will be able to figure out what the picture is, why you're including it, and what information would be necessary if they were not visually able to see it. So consider users of adaptive hardware and software. So as we've said, one of the advantages, right, of distance education is anytime, anywhere learning. That's supposed to be the goal. A lot of times that creates challenges for students if there are components of the course that are not accessible. So the hope is that if you have a student who's enrolled in an online class that who's deaf or hard of hearing, they don't have to go and ask for accommodation at the disabled student's office. the site is accessible, their captions are available, or if a student is visually impaired, if the site's been created in a way that meets accessibility standards, they don't have to come in and say, I can't read the page, or my instructor uses images for all of the exams. So consider that 20% of the population has some kind of disability. Now, not all of these disabilities make it difficult to access the internet, but that's still a significant portion of the population. Check for accessibility options in your course management system. Now, years ago when online was just starting to develop, a lot of accessibility things were afterthoughts. People would have to try to go back and add things to try to make it accessible. A lot more work to go back and retrofit something compared to building it accessibly to start with. At our college we use Blackboard Learn. They've done a terrific job of including accessibility as part of the template. So if you're including an image, it's going to pop up with a box that says include the alternate tag for that image. Or remember that captions need to be included for that video. So there are, most of the larger name course management systems now are utilizing accessibility as a component of the interface. I gave an example here. Another thing, extended times on exams. A lot of times instructors don't realize that they can make an extended time on a test. If you use timed exams, a student with a disability may request that they have extended time on a test because they're using a screen reader or they're using some other device to access the materials. Creating an extended time on a test is very easy. You can create that for one student. I particularly don't use timed exams. I think that they have enough other assignments and things like that that they're going to have to submit that they can have as much time as they need for the exam. Most students finish the time at their 10-point exam within a half an hour. So I've seen that I don't really need to make these extended times on tests because they don't usually need all the time to do the exam. I also included a section here from the Blackboard site in the Grade Center that they have a screen reading mode that you can turn on for the gradebook. So that's just part of the Blackboard system. So there are a lot of built-in tools that you can use to help make your course more accessible. You may have to ask, you may have to do a little research on the site, but a lot of the courses now are including that as just part of what they do. So usability. So sometimes people say, well, if it's accessible, it's usable. Well, not necessarily. Things can be accessible and not usable. So when we talk about some of the steps from constructing accessible websites, learnability. So can students use the site effectively the first time they visit the site without becoming frustrated? Is it very clear to the student, how do I log in? Or how do I find the course textbooks? Or how do I find the syllabus? Memorability. Will students remember how to use the site the next time they visit? That's one big plus with keeping things simple and consistent, that the students will remember, okay, so I'm using an icon of a textbook to link them to the textbook site, that every place in the course the same image is being used as that icon. The students are going to remember that's what that means. If in one place you use a textbook and then the next picture you use a page and then the next picture it's just a link, students aren't going to remember what it was they were supposed to be doing. Effectiveness. Will students easily navigate through the site, determine what they need to do next to understand the content? Is the design predictable and consistent? So you want to make sure that if you really want the students to read something, that you tell the students, read this information. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be very specific to say, start here. This is week 1's information. Before week 2, make sure you've done the following 5 things. Efficiency. Can students find what they need and accomplish their goal in a reasonable amount of time? Are they having to, like I said, limiting the number of clicks? If you're wanting them to read the syllabus, make sure the syllabus is on the very first page of information that they're going to come to. And satisfaction. How do students have a good feeling about the site? Is the content presented effectively? So you want students, right, that want to log into their online class, that they will visit it often. Part of the challenge, sometimes the students log in once a week and think they can just do all of their work in one visit. Probably not, but they need to be able to be willing and want to be able to visit the site regularly. Okay, avoiding fluff to accessorize your website. So I'm sure a lot of you remember back when PowerPoint was first coming around. Well, I had an instructor back in the 90s who had just learned how to use PowerPoint. And he used every single option in PowerPoint. So every slide had a different transition. Every slide had scrolling text. It had music. It had images that would slide in and out, go larger. The color changed. The font changed. He was very excited. He was very proud of himself that he had learned to use every one of the tools. But just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? So with some of the text, make sure that there's a reason why you're doing it. If you have text that can be hard to read or scrolling, spinning, that may cause a problem for somebody, not necessarily even a person with a disability, but somebody who has a vision issue or difficulty reading. So scrolling or rolling text, background music that is constant and can't be turned off. Another challenge, sometimes instructors like to add music that just because they like the music. Sometimes the students don't want to hear that every single time they go to a certain page to have music that can't be turned off. Or images that don't convey messages or meanings. Sometimes we have instructors who are very creative and include images, which is fine, but if you don't tell the student why it's there, or if there's no alt tag to say this is why I'm using this image, they won't know if it's supposed to mean something or if you're just adding it for decoration. Basic, simple, easily readable fonts. Cursive fonts, really hard to read. Sometimes instructors like them because they think they look nice, but they're not easy to read. Or if there's not a lot of contrast between the backgrounds and the font that you're choosing. Don't rely on the appearance of font, color, shape to convey meaning. A lot of times you'll see it says, click on the red button to access this next component. Well, if somebody is visually impaired, they're not going to know where the red button is, or if they're colorblind. So you want to make sure that you're using other things other than just the color. So of course I had to include a couple examples of really poor design. I hate to pick on people, but sometimes I think it makes the point a lot better to actually look at something and see if anyone here, if you could see some challenges with this site. Now obviously it's called the 60s press, so maybe they're in the 60s, the psychedelic colors, the background. Here we have the image of, this is the creator of the site. No consistent font. The background, pretty hard to see, pretty hard to read. The text, a variety of different colors. There's no standardization of anything. I'm not really even sure what it is he's trying to sell or what he's trying to create. I think it has something to do with reading materials. Sorry. Okay, so we will look at one more. So this is from Yale University. So you would think that Yale University's School of Art would be really good. Not so good. Not so good. I don't think a screen reader would do very well with some of these images. But another example of poor design. So we'll quickly go over the 9 principles of universal design for education. First is equitable use. So the design should be appealing, should allow the same meaning for use of all students whenever possible. So I included a picture or an image of my welcome message. So every one of my online classes includes a welcome message. The students know, start here, welcome, here's a little bit about me. It's like a virtual orientation. If they were to come to my class, they would have that me standing in front of them. They come to my online class, they have me in video format welcoming them to the class. So thinking of them as digital curb cuts, so universal design that benefits all users. So flexibility in use. So the design should provide choices and method of use. So I chose using VoiceThread. Fantastic way to have students be able to create their own content, sharing information. It's very accessible. You can create transcripts that can go along with it. So consider offering other things other than just text. create podcasts, create PowerPoints, anything that's going to give them a variety of options when you're presenting the materials to them. Simple and intuitive use. So curriculum design straightforward, predictable, eliminates unnecessary complexity. Consider using rubrics for class assignments. Makes your life much easier. Then the students know exactly what it is that you're looking for, why they got a 4 points out of, why they got 4 points, or they only got 1 point. There's not a lot of back and forth on, well, I thought it was a great posting. Well, here, this tells you right here, look at the rubric and you'll see. Give examples. Perceptible information. Okay, curriculum design communicates necessary information effectively. As we said, including captions for video presentations not only benefit students who are deaf or hard of hearing, but students that are English second language learners. Tolerance for error. This is a great one. A lot of students are nervous when they take an online class, especially when it comes time for a quiz. They're so afraid that little timer is going to ding and they haven't finished yet. They haven't checked all of the boxes. So consider offering an ungraded practice exam for the students. I like to do that for my students. That way they've seen how the tests are set up. There's no points involved. Almost all of the students do it. Even though they're not getting any points for doing it, they feel much more comfortable that, okay, now I know, now when it comes to the real test, I know what to expect. Okay, so another one, including the option for students to edit their own discussion board postings. Sometimes students post things and then go back later and realize, oops, that's not what I meant for it to say. Give them the option that they can edit it. Give them the opportunity to correct their mistakes if they made one. Okay, low physical effort. So clearly written instructions for submitting assignments with examples. If you want the students to write a 500-word essay on something, tell them, I want a 500-word essay, including these following things. Be very clear. If you leave things ambiguous, especially in an online class, students have to guess, and you don't want them to guess. You want them to know what exactly the expectations are. Okay, size and space for use. So a lot of times this would be related to a physical location, but when I think about the online location, I think about diverse communication needs, incorporating examples and graphics, multiple representations of materials. So giving the students based on their learning style. If you're an auditory person, give podcasts. If you're very visual, include images with alt tags. Think about the diversity of the student. Okay, community of learners, designed to promote interaction and communication among students and faculty. Online study groups, learning communities, synchronous class meetings. Of course, CCC Confer, which is a great way to interact with your students. Creating a discussion forum for your students to share information. In my class, the personal growth class, when I talk about scholarships, students are great saying, I saw this great scholarship opportunity, posting things for their classmates. Instructional climate. Okay, one of the things, right, we want to make sure that we are welcoming and inclusive to all of our students and that we have high expectations for all of our students. So including a sample syllabus statement telling the student that I've made every effort to make sure that this course is accessible to all students, including the students with disabilities. If there's any problems, contact me immediately. Post contact information and links to student support services that are available. A lot of times students don't know where would I go if I needed assistance. So is our teaching environment welcoming to all students? Just as physical barriers exist in our physical environment, curricular barriers exist in our instructional environment. So we want to maximize the reach of the internet, our courses for everyone, regardless of their culture and abilities, to everything, applications and devices from computers and mobile devices, everywhere, from high and low bandwidths and diverse modes of interaction, touch, mouse, voice, assistive technology. And the universal design doesn't imply one size fits all. Instead, it stresses the need for flexible, customizable content, assignments, and activities. Thank you. Any questions?
Do you have any suggestion about what the best way is for an entire institution to check courses for if they're accessible, or how do you do that?
So we're fortunate at the San Diego Community College District is that we have instructional designers who are versed in accessibility. So they would know what to look for. I mean, there are all sorts of accessibility checkers that you can run your site through to say, this is missing, you need assistance with that. But I think having someone, either a distance ed coordinator, an instructional designer, someone who has familiarity with some of the 508 standards or any of the guidelines as it relates to accessibility to assist you with that. The trainings are really good. Blackboard, like I said, does a great job of including that as part of their training. That they don't go back later and say, oh yeah, and by the way, you need to make sure that you include the assistive technology or the access. That's just one of the components of the training. So I think utilizing any of the services that you have, and I think broadcasting that. We have a great resource with the DECT grant and things like that for doing captioning. That's just part of when you're deciding, okay, I want to teach online. Okay, are you going to use videos? Here's the steps that you need to do. Are you going to use a lot of images? Here's the things that you need to do. So it's taken quite a few years to get to the point where it's just part of what we do.
The follow-up to that is, does every DE course that you have go through some type of review process?
Yes and no. So I don't want to say that some faculty don't want anyone looking at their class. That's not being recorded, right? But that is the case. Some don't want anybody looking at their class. But the challenge will be if they have a student that has a disability and enrolls in their class and there is an accessibility issue, the class can be cut. They can say, we're not letting you offer this class until it's fixed. So we try really hard to get the things accessible before the class goes live, but there are a lot of instructors who want to do their own thing, or if they're using a course e-pack maybe, that they have the ability to upload things themselves. There isn't somebody who's just going to automatically go and check things. You know, our faculty are pretty good in saying, I need some help, can somebody look at it for me? But I'm sure there's a lot of things that get passed that no one has looked at.
Great.
Any questions? Okay, sure. Thank you.